Hello everyone, and welcome once again to STEM Sunshine 242. In this second lesson on number theory, we would like to continue our discussion on the different types of numbers. The numbers we would like to discuss today are odd numbers, even numbers, prime, composite, square numbers, cube numbers, and triangular numbers. So let's begin. The first type of number I'd like to talk about are what we call even numbers. Even numbers are numbers that are divisible by 2 and ends in a 0, a 2, a 4, a 6, or an 8. When we say that a number is divisible by 2, we mean that the number can be divided by 2 without leaving a remainder. Some examples of even numbers are the numbers 12, 36, or 470. Odd numbers are numbers that are not divisible by 2 and do not end in a 0, a 2, 4, 6, or 8. Some examples of odd numbers are the numbers 3, 17, and 79. Now, before we proceed any further, I would like to discuss two fundamental mathematical concepts. These are factors and multiples. Factors are numbers that are multiplied together to create another number. For example, if we multiply the numbers 2 and 3, we would get 6. We can therefore say both 2 and 3 are factors of 6. Another example would be if we multiply the numbers 4 and 10 to get 40. We can therefore say that 4 and 10 are factors of 40. Now multiples, on the other hand, are what we get when we multiply 2 or more factors together. If we look at the product of 2 and 3, for instance, we get 6, and we can therefore say 6 is a multiple of both 2 and 3. Again, if we multiply the numbers 4 and 10, we would get 40, and so we can therefore conclude that 40 is a multiple of both 4 and 10. So now that we have covered those two concepts, let's continue our lesson with prime numbers. Prime numbers are numbers with just two factors, 1 and itself. Some examples of prime numbers are the numbers 2, 3, 5, 7, 23, or 41. I should mention that prime numbers are generally odd numbers. Also, the numbers 0 and 1 are not prime numbers, and prime numbers also include negative numbers. For example, negative 3, negative 5, negative 11, and negative 23 are all examples of prime numbers. Composite numbers, on the other hand, have more than just two factors. For examples, if we look at the number 24, we see that we can get 24 by multiplying the factors 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, or 4 and 6. These numbers are all factors of the number 24. Another type of number I'd like to discuss is what we call triangular numbers. Now, a triangular number is a number in a sequence where each number in the sequence can be represented in the form of an equilateral triangular grid of elements. Now, what do I mean by that? If we look at this diagram where our elements are small circles, we see in our first term that we have just one element. If we added the number 2, that would give us 3 elements in our second term. Adding the number 3 gives us 6 elements in our third term. And if we added 4 to 6, we would get 10 elements in our fourth term. Adding 5 will give us 15 elements in the fifth term. Adding 6 will give us 21 elements in the sixth term. We can also see that the number of elements are arranged in an equilateral triangle where all sides have the same number of elements. The second term has 2 elements on each side. The third term has 3 elements on each side. The fourth term has 4 elements on each side, and so on. If we continue to add successive terms, we can predict the amount of elements in the 7th and the 8th term. Or we can use this formula here to show us how to calculate the number of elements in each term. The formula tells us that we can calculate the value of any term in the series by adding a 1, then multiplying by itself. That is adding a 1 to the nth term where n represents the term in question, and multiplying by itself and dividing the entire product by 2. So if we want to calculate the value of the 7th term, for instance, all we have to do is just substitute the number 7 for the n in this formula. So if we plugged in the number 7 where we see n in this formula, we would get 56 divided by 2, or 28 items, or elements rather, in the 7th term. Similarly, if we want to calculate the 8th term in the sequence, we can perform the same operation and we would get 36 elements in the 8th term. And if we check back on our table here, we will see that the 7th term does indeed has 28 elements, and the 8th term indeed has 36 elements. Another type of number I would like to discuss is a square number. Now, we get a square number when we multiply a number by itself. If we multiply the number 1 by itself, for instance, we would get 1. If we multiply 2 by itself, and here this superscript, means that we are squaring the number. Here we have the superscript here, the little 2 here above the 1, that indicates that we are multiplying the number 1 by itself. Here we have the little 2 above the number 2, or rather on the side of the number 2, and it indicates that we are squaring the number 2 to get 4. And if we squared the number 3, we would get 9, and so on. In this table, I've taken the liberty of showing a correlation between the series of odd numbers and the series of square numbers. Indeed, if we wanted to determine the value of the square number, for example, in the second term of the series of square numbers, we simply add the first term in the series of square numbers with the second term in the series of odd numbers. So 1 plus 3 will give us 4. If we wanted to know what the third term in the series of square numbers was, we would simply add the third term in the odd number series to the second term in the square number series, in this case 5 and 4, and we would get 9. And if we wanted to know what the fourth term in the series of square numbers is, we would simply add the fourth term in the series of odd numbers to the third term in the series of square numbers, in this case 7 and 9, to get 16, and so on. The last set of numbers I would like to discuss is what we call the set of cube numbers. Now, we get a cube number when we multiply a number by itself twice. For instance, if we multiply the number 1 by itself twice, what we call cubing the number 1, we will get an answer of 1. If we cubed the number 2, we will get 8. If we cubed 3, we will get 27. Cubing 4 gives us 64. 5, 125, 6, 216, 7, 343, and so on. So in summarizing, let's review what we discussed today. We talked about even numbers, and we said that these numbers were divisible by 2 and ended in a 0, a 2, a 4, a 6, or an 8. Next, we talked about odd numbers, and we said that these numbers do not end in a 0, 2, 4, 6, or an 8, and they are not divisible by 2. We discussed prime numbers, and we said that prime numbers are numbers that only have 2 factors, 1 and itself. We also talked about composite numbers, and we said that composite numbers are numbers with more than two factors. We also talked about square numbers, and we said that multiplying a number by itself is what we call squaring the number. We talked about cube numbers, and we said when you multiply a number by itself twice, we get a cube number. We also talked about triangular numbers, and we said that triangular numbers are numbers in a series whereby each term can be represented by a grid of elements set up in the form of an equilateral triangle. We also talked about the formula used to calculate the value of each term in the triangular series of numbers. That formula being n plus 1 multiplied by n divided by 2, where n represents the term in the triangular sequence of numbers in question. So there you have it. Number 3, lesson 2. For those of you who enjoyed this presentation or found it to be informative, please like this video. And if you have not already done so, please subscribe to this channel. Thanks for watching.